Erev Tov, everyone. Erev Tov, everyone. It's good to see all of you. Thanks for joining us tonight. Welcome to Congregation Shalom. If you don't know me, my name is Brian Abner. I'm the Director of Congregational Learning here. We're happy to have all of you join us for not the happiest conversation, but an important one and important information for us to learn about. So as you all know, we're here to learn about the latest report from the ADL, from the Anti-Defamation League, about anti-Semitism in the United States. I want to thank the women of Shalom for allowing us to be part of the ADL Signature Synagogue program, which brings opportunities like this and training for our teens and other educational opportunities to our congregation. So in a moment, I'm going to introduce Rachel Hirsh. Rachel Hirsh is a dedicated educational leader and nonprofit executive with over a decade of experience in program administration, strategic planning, and relationship development. She has a deep commitment to advancing equity, inclusion, and professional growth within diverse communities, and she currently serves as the Senior Associate Director of Outreach and Partnership at the ADL, where she builds strategic relationships and creates meaningful opportunities for community and organizational partners. Previously, Rachel has served as the Senior Director and Trainer at Mary Baldwin University's McCree Center for Life Success, leading initiatives to enhance student engagement and career development. Her career spans leadership roles across nonprofit management, higher education, K-12 education, where she has consistently championed inclusive environments and amplified underrepresented voices. Rachel holds a PhD in technology and humanities from the Illinois Institute of Technology, with research focused on the Me Too movement and the power of storytelling for social change. So we're very happy that Rachel is here to share with us this information, and I want to invite Rachel to come on up.
Hi, everyone. Oh my goodness, it's so embarrassing to hear that read, but thank you. Especially because I wrote it myself, so that makes it more embarrassing. So I am here to talk about anti-Semitism in the U.S. ADL does this audit every year, and it is the oldest measure of anti-Semitism, or the audit of anti-Semitic incidents is ADL's oldest measure of anti-Semitism. It is really just the effort to tally and quantify the actual incidents that happen to real people. And these have been reported to us by victims, by law enforcement. We pull them from the media. And then also we work in partnership with other organizations. We work with JCRC. We have been exchanging data. We started this partnership. And Roberta has been extremely helpful. I've already bothered her about 2 incidents this year, and literally one a week ago. And so this is just the culmination of looking at the year. If I can click the right way. And so one of the things just to note about this is these are anti-Semitic incidents. I want to distinguish that they're not all hate crimes, and that a hate crime is a crime that's motivated by a hateful bias. But we are working on a law in Illinois, and we probably will look at building this in other states as well, or strengthening language that already exists in bills in other states. The bill is called 3552. I know it's a really sexy name. But it is to mandate hate crimes training for anti-Semitic, or for any hate crimes. Hate crimes training for police officers for any hate crimes. So this year we had 9,354 anti-Semitic incidents. This is the highest number we've ever recorded in audit history. It's also interesting to note that we think that this number is smaller than the actual amount of incidents. We know that people are still not reporting to ourselves or to local organizations. And so I urge you, if something is happening, please report it. Because we have a full incident response team. We work with partners, and we ensure that incidents are handled. 2024 saw a 4% increase from 2023, or a 5% increase, from 2023, a 344% increase since 2020, and a staggering 893% increase since 2015. So so in the past 10 years, anti-Semitic incidents have increased nearly 900%. Now, we can see that there is a spike around October 7th. But if you look at 2019, that was actually a record high year as well. So it was already trending up in that time. And then before 2019, our previous record was in 1994. And so we've really surpassed that record for the past 4 years, and tenfold since 2015. So what this kind of breakdown looks like, so 9,354 incidents, that would be 25, almost 26 incidents per day, 1 an hour, and this is a really interesting thing to note. 50% of all incidents have elements related to Israel or Zionism. This is the largest proportion we've ever seen in audit history. So this kind of confirms what we already know, that anti-Semitism is on the rise, and that is persistent reality for American Jews, especially in the wake of October 7th. So we track increases in kind of these 3 major categories, and we track these 3 major categories. So one is harassment, vandalism, and assault. And so vandalism was up about 20%, with 2,606 incidents, and assault was up 21% with 196 incidents. Harassment was up less than 1%, so roughly the same as last year. However, there are still more than 6,500 incidents of harassment, so we know that the percentage changes well, but the actual total is extremely historically high. So the growth in assaults is particularly concerning. Across those 196 assaults, there were 250 victims. In 23 of those assaults, the perpetrator used a deadly weapon. And we know that Orthodox and visibly Jewish individuals were disproportionately targeted, and they made up about 30% of those assaults. So people who maybe were wearing a Magan David or a kippah, or anything that identified them as Jewish. And so vandalism also grew pretty significantly. Of the vandalism, 37% of the vandalism included a swastika, and 51% involved anti-Semitic messages or symbols related to Israel or Zionism, which is the highest we've seen. Okay, so these are just a couple examples of what we've seen in through harassment. So we define harassment as cases in which one or more Jewish people, or people who are perceived to be Jewish, were harassed verbally or in writing with anti-Semitic slurs, stereotypes, or conspiracy theories. And it's just interesting to note, and I know that you already know this, but the conspiracy theories, I think, have been coming back in total full force. They've just gotten like a little more Botox and a little filler, and they've changed a little bit, but to update, but they're exactly the same. And then vandalism is defined as cases where property was damaged in a manner that incorporated evidence of anti-Semitic intent, or which had anti-Semitic impact on Jews. And so the category includes swastikas, anti-Semitic graffiti on synagogues, schools, Jewish community centers, and in public spaces. We saw a rise, like in Chicago, at parks. And then notable vandalism, like I said, about 37% of the vandalism were swastikas, 51% contained Israel-related messaging, and Jewish institutions faced a 39% increase in vandalism, with synagogues being particularly targeted. And so here's just, again, a kind of a small sample of the vandalism incidents we tracked. So swastikas that you can see on school property or anti-Semitic graffiti on synagogues. So the thing that's interesting to note about this, it's not necessarily just the property damage, it's that these are messages of intimidation and exclusion. So each swastika or slogan really sends a clear message that Jews are not welcome or unsafe. Okay, assaults. So physical assaults we define as cases where Jewish people or people who are perceived to be Jewish were targeted with physical violence accompanied by evidence of anti-Semitic animus. We saw that concerning 21% increase. We talked about in those 23 cases, perpetrators had used deadly weapons, and those included knives and guns. Assault incidents demonstrate, of course, the most extreme manifestation of anti-Semitism. It's not just hateful speech, but it's also physical violence. So some examples are a Jewish individual stabbed near Chabad headquarters in Brooklyn while somebody yelled "Free Palestine" while they were doing it. There were the two incidents on DePaul's campus in Chicago, where one student had his wrist broken, and the other one was knocked unconscious and given a concussion for holding a sign that said, like, "Talk to me about Israel," and an IDF soldier. While harassment at Jewish institutions is down, vandalism is up 39%, and assaults more than double. So while incidents targeting Jewish institutions decreased by 14%, they still remain alarmingly high. And so synagogues face hundreds of bomb threats over the course of the year, with 86% of all anti-Semitic bomb threats targeting synagogues. The threats often occurred as part of large sprees. So for an example, email threats have been sent to over 100 synagogues over the course of just 2 days in January 2024. And the sustained targeting of synagogues and Jewish community centers and Jewish schools continues to stoke fear around American Jews who simply just want to participate in Jewish communal life. So there was also a trend that happened this year and the year prior, where if synagogues do not have a secure way to share a stream, people would call in a bomb threat when they were so they could watch it on the stream. So it was like a weird, sick video game or something that they were watching. And then the campus crisis. So college campuses have been part of the epicenter of American anti-Semitism, with incidents increasing for 84% to 1,694 incidents, representing nearly 1/5 of all of our anti-Semitic incidents nationwide. So there are 5 campuses where we saw the majority of incidents, or the most incidents. They were Columbia, Rutgers University in New Brunswick, UCLA, University of Michigan, and NYU. And then this crisis really peaked during the encampments. There was another spike of activity on the first anniversary of October 7th when some student groups used the occasion to celebrate the attack. And then here is just some examples of real-life incidents that occurred on American college campuses in 2024. Imagine seeing globalized the Intifada projected on the side of your campus building or chalked in the middle of your quad. This pervasive anti-Semitism has transformed American higher education from a space of learning and growth into one where Jewish students are unfortunately facing hostility, exclusion, and unfortunately sometimes physical danger because of their identity or beliefs. So another interesting statistic is really about K-12 schools, and this is a space where we think we're seeing incidents being underreported. So while anti-Semitic incidents in non-Jewish K-12 schools decreased by 26%, Jewish children are continually exposed to concerning levels of hate. So only 15% of K-12 incidents were related to Israel or Zionism, but 52% featured swastikas. So this is significantly higher than any other location type. The severity of these incidents range from intimidation to physical violence. One student was called a dirty Jew and told that they needed to go to a concentration camp. Another one was hit on the head with a glass bottle and being told, "I'm going to beat you up, you effing Jew." So given the insidious nature of bullying and the fact that many children do not feel empowered to report their experiences, it's likely that the actual number of school-based incidents is significantly higher than what's actually reported to us. And I think even in 2025, in the Midwest, I've seen far more K-12 incidents. So here are some kind of key takeaways, and then I'll move on to the next part of the presentation. But our college campuses were a primary concern. Our incidents there were up 84%. And while security measures may be improving at Jewish institutions, Jews are experiencing hatred in their daily environments where they might feel vulnerable or isolated. And then incidents at K-12 are likely being underreported. So now we'll look a little bit about Israel-related. So Israel and Zionism were those themes. 58% of all the anti-Semitic incidents, which was up 72%. So this is the first time, again, in audit history, that the majority of anti-Semitic incidents were Israel or Zionism related. A major driver was the anti-Semitic rhetoric at anti-Israel protests. But not every single protest had anti-Semitic messaging. So out of 5,000 anti-Israel rallies tracked by ADL in 2024, 2,596 of them involved anti-Semitic messaging in the form of signs or chants or in speeches. So just over half. So activity and rhetoric really kind of fell into four main categories. So one is the justification or glorification of anti-Semitic violence, support for terrorism or designated terrorist organizations and their leaders, classic anti-Semitic tropes or conspiracy theories, and then anti-Zionism, so calling for the destruction of Israel and calls to marginalize Jewish people for their connection to Israel. We say that it's okay to be critical of Israel's government. That's not anti-Zionism. You should be critical, as you should be critical of President Trump as well. But when you're calling for the eraser of the state, when you're bringing up old anti-Semitic tropes, when you are glorifying terrorists or their leaders, it is anti-Semitic. So here are some examples. So many of these were, we looked at protests. So a lot of the featured rhetoric interpreted calls to destroy Israel through slogans like death to Israel, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, alongside rhetoric explicitly marginalizing Jews with a connection to Israel. At each rally, the ADL examined all expressions of anti-Semitism, but they were tallied as one single incident, regardless of how many were expressed through all of the rallies. So this kind of normalization of anti-Semitic themes at demonstrations has moved from fringe anti-Israel in like least or less visible or public spaces, and now it's become extremely visible. So it's creating environments where Jewish individuals are really face increasing harassment. So on the other side, White supremacist groups distributed anti-Semitic propaganda in 962 incidents across 47 states and the District of Columbia. This is a 17% decrease from 2023, but it remains historically high. So Patriot Front, Goyim Defense League, and White Lives Matter Network are responsible for 94% of the propaganda that were documented, and 75% of the propaganda incidents contained anti-Israel or anti-Zionist messaging. So it goes back to that kind of horseshoe, where the alt-right and kind of the extreme left are meeting on those kind of 6 things, and one of them being anti-Semitism. And then here's some examples. Patriot Front has been the most prolific distributor of white supremacist propaganda. We see materials from them like no Zionist in government, we serve one nation, saying that like Jews are disloyal and they serve 2 nations. Propaganda from the Goyim Defense League or GDL really helped spread those anti-Semitic myths and conspiracy theories, including those really baseless charges about Jewish power, blaming Jews for 9/11, promoting blood libel, COVID, any of the things that they do. And then ADL also tracked 47 anti-Semitic white supremacist events, which was a slight decrease from 2023, which was 49 events. So some key takeaways. Anti-Israel protests were the major vector of anti-Semitism, with that 2,596 incidents. Those 4 main categories, so justification of anti-Semitic violence, support for designated terrorist groups, classic anti-Semitic tropes or conspiracy theories, and calls to marginalize Jews and their connection to Israel. And, white supremacist propaganda remains high despite the slight decrease, and anti-Semitism transcends political boundaries. So it is coming from multiple spaces and from multiple ideologies. Okay, so this is where anti-Semitism occurs. So we've seen, most greatly, it's in public areas, followed by Jewish institutions, and then colleges and universities. And then you can see from there, non-Jewish schools, business establishments, homes and housing, other Jewish-owned businesses, or cemeteries. So these are the states that have the highest percent of incidents. So there were incidents in every single state, and Washington, D.C. in 2024, but the states with the largest Jewish populations were hit the hardest. So New York, California, and New Jersey led the count with 1,437 incidents, 1,344 incidents, and 719 incidents. But the geographic distribution shows that anti-Semitism is not limited to areas with large Jewish populations. So states like Colorado had 279 incidents, and Virginia had 266. And these are significant totals, despite having comparatively smaller Jewish communities. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not supposed to be in there, Minnesota. Okay, so here is a little bit of information about what we're doing. Let's talk about the methodology, I guess. So these are incidents reported directly by ADL victims, as well as reports from law enforcement, media accounts, and then information from partner organizations, like I said at the top. And then each incident is actually verified for credibility and counted only once, regardless of how many times it's been reported to us. And they go through an extremely rigorous process, so essentially the incident will come in, The LEIR person, the law enforcement incident person, and the team will look at the incident, respond to the incident, and then we'll submit it for audit, and then it has to submit through an audit, I think, 2 other times. So there's 3 sets of eyes on it before it actually goes into the audit. And so we carefully distinguish, of course, in looking at this between legitimate political speech and anti-Semitism. So again, criticism of Israel or anti-Israel activism is not inherently anti-Semitic, and it wouldn't be included in our data. However, when it invokes anti-Semitic tropes, explicitly targets Jews for their identity or their perceived connection to Israel, those incidents are included. And then our methodology aligns with the IRA definition of the working definition of anti-Semitism. Okay, so what we're doing. So these are kind of the 6 things that we do. And like I said before, we also partner with institutions to do this as well, or with other organizations to do this as well. So our mission is not just to monitor anti-Semitism, it's to do everything we can to stop the defamation of Jewish people and secure justice and fair treatment for all. So we work to expose and address all forms of anti-Semitism through a comprehensive approach. We're on the ground responding to incidents of anti-Semitism wherever they might occur, supporting targets of hate and working with our partners to keep communities safe. We advocate for effective policy solutions and the passage of legislation like the Countering Anti-Semitism Act. And then we analyze data and produce cutting-edge research trends in anti-Semitism and extremism, and provide information to law enforcement and other partners. I actually just met with Oren Siegel, who oversees everything with our Center of Anti-Semitism Research, our Center for Extremism, and our Center for Technology Services. And in 2025, already, since January, they were able to stop 25 incidents of that were to be targeted incidents on the Jewish community. So that's one kind of really incredible thing that they're able to do. Scrape information from the internet, get in those nitty-gritty sites, and see what people are saying, and then really report that and stop things before they happen. We litigate in order to help people hold people accountable for actions and provide justice for individuals who have been targeted by hate. And then we speak out strongly against anti-Semitic rhetoric in the media, in the news, and on the streets wherever it occurs. We provide valuable anti-Semitism education. We come and do presentations like this, and tools and resources for schools and workplaces. And we're dedicated to fighting anti-Semitism and protecting our communities every day. And so thank you for joining me today. Okay, so in 2024, again, as you've seen through all the data, it really was another kind of difficult year. And so many Jewish people, I'm sure you could tell me as well, feel scared or feel vulnerable, and they feel their pain isn't being necessarily recognized, and that masses of people are out to demonize them or harass them or attack them. So one of the things that we're asking right now for you to do, and that you can do as a Jewish person, is to reach out to those non-Jewish allies. So reach out to friends or neighbors. Share this information with them. Share with them how you're feeling. Give them those personal stories that you have. That's going to make the connection. That's going to change the minds. We want our friends to outnumber our enemies. And so we know that there are countless great people who are supporting us, and we're just urging them to be a little bit more vocal. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to do in my job as Senior Associate Regional Director of Outreach and Partnership, because they wanted to make me have a very short title. is really reaching out to some of our non-Jewish allies to have them, come behind us and really stand with us. And we should be very proud, and that's another thing, of our institutions and our flourishing Jewish life and culture. So don't shy away from Judaism. One of the things they said at Never Is Now is if everybody could be just 10% more Jewish and lean into the Judaism, your love for your Judaism will always outweigh the hate. So whether that's including your connection to Israel, building strength with Jewish friends and allies, but continue to be strong and proud and undaunted by the challenge of anti-Semitism. So if you want to, you can scan this and find information on how to connect with your state leaders and protect the community. The QR code, you can just scan it and it'll bring you to the page, and then it will very easily write a letter for you that will come from your email that we'll send to your governor to urge them to act. And I'll leave it up there for a second for you, Sue.
Rich, I'll just share that our governor and our city mayor are good friends to the Jewish community and have spoken out about anti-Semitism, and this extra outreach helps, but they're good friends to the Jewish community.
And if you don't get that QR code now, email me and I will send you that link tomorrow.
Perfect. And then just one more push. Please report incidents, even if it's a small incident of harassment. It's important that it's represented. Usually when I speak to people who report incidents, I handle all the K-12 and university incidents, from being a K-12 teacher and assistant principal, and then working in the university space for 6 years. I always hear, this happened to me, this also happened to me before. And I'm like, wait, that's another whole incident. Well, I didn't report it because I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And I'm like, that is a big deal. That was wrong as well. So, this research wouldn't be possible without without any of you in the community reporting incidents of anti-Semitism. And so you can report them to JCRC, you can report them to us, we will share that information. But please report incidents. And then if you do, you will hear from somebody in the office. I can assure you of that. Okay, and then questions if you've got any.
First, Rachel, we want to thank you for sharing all of this data.
Thank you.
We know this is, not the easiest information to hear. Clearly, the numbers have jumped significantly in the last 2 years. So, I know it's important that we continue to learn this and continue to, like you were saying, report and share with our leadership. While Rachel's here, does anyone have any questions about the report or about, how we can respond? They want to ask at this moment.
I talk to my daughter every day. She's in Israel. And she's out there demonstrating against the government constantly. She says 65 to 70% of the Jewish population in Israel is getting tired of the deaths of civilians in Gaza. And what effect do you think this has on why we're getting more anti-Semitic responses? Because many of the Jews feel the same way. They look at Zionism. My daughter's thinking about, even though she's lived there most of her life, coming back to the States and leaving it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because so many things are connected. I think this new regime of leaders has come in office, and a lot of these are things I'm saying, not ADL. There's more authoritarian tendencies, and I think as a young person living in Israel, I would probably also be critical of the government. I think that that's okay. I do understand, however, that people are very tired of the war in Israel. It's horrible to be in war, especially when it's like on your home front. Like when when I was like a kid and after September 11th, you didn't feel the effects, right? And they feel the effects every single day when they get those alerts twice every night and have to bring their kids to like their bomb shelters in the middle of the night. And so it's very tough. I think I think it's fine to be critical of Israel. I think people are getting tired. I think that what's happening now, also with what's happening here, is things are skewing in a way where it looks like government is really supporting us, but I think some of the things that's happening is actually putting a target on our backs too, because it's looking like we're either getting special treatment, and why would we be getting special treatment? Could it be because the Jews have all the power or something? So it's really feeding into those conspiracy theories again. And so I know I did not answer your question and I'm totally rambling, but I think that it's not great that the war is continuing to go on, but on the other side, what are they supposed to do if Hamas won't take a deal? Just give up and leave 53 people there?
And to add to that, I think the issue of the anti-Semitism as a result of what's happening in Israel, we say all the time at the Jewish Federation, right, to blame any Jew in Milwaukee for what's happening in Israel is no different to blame any Arab, Muslim, or Palestinian in Milwaukee for October 7th. So the opinions about it are one thing, blaming every Jew on the planet for what's happening there is another. And I think that's kind of the crux, and there's a whole lot of emotion all around. Quite frankly, everyone's out of their mind. I'm sure we field very similar calls on a regular basis. I sometimes have people in the Jewish community calling and yelling at me that we're not doing demonstrations, and my response is we're not going to put everyone's safety at risk. That's not how you impact change. I don't care how well worded your sign is. But I think there's our distinction to me, what you said about anti-Semitism, our distinction is to blame any Jew for what you disagree with in Israel is anti-Semitism. And we don't control it, and we can't fix it from here. Well, I think respectfully there's a distinction between the American government backing anything and every Jew on the planet backing everything. And just to, but it's really complicated. And hence where we are in life.
Other questions for Rachel? Come back to you first.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you. I am wondering about what surveillance, if any, the ADL does with, mainstream media. I read a lot of newspapers every day, and a lot of times I find the language on the reporting very biased and slanted, verbs used, adjectives used, when it should be a neutral reporting. And what effect that might have on the public reading that as a trusted news source as opposed to just general information online. Do you measure those things? What sort of action is being taken to try to enlighten the journalistic community about how to remain more neutral in the reporting?
Yeah, so it's very tough because that is something that we definitely monitor. And have you seen the movie October 8? So they actually talk a lot about that in the movie and how, and we will reach out to publications as well and either ask them to retract, change their statement, but the real problem that we're seeing is they are doing it, but they're doing it very quietly. And so essentially, one example they have is in 2023 when there was that rocket that blew up the hospital in Gaza. Initially it said like Israel rocket kills 20,000 people at, or children like in hospital. Then it says like, and then it says the headline, it wasn't true, so they changed the headline, but it still like wasn't quite strong enough, and it said like, rocket, possibly Israel's rocket, blew up hospital in Gaza, and then finally, hours later, they changed the headline, but it wasn't the story anymore. And it said like, IDF confirms it was a rocket from Gaza that malfunctioned and blew up the hospital. But now everybody's ingested the media. So it is very tough because I think that there is anti-Semitic messaging in a lot of our mainstream media. My in-laws love the BBC because they just don't want to watch American news, and I was like, you gotta stop watching the BBC. We do contact publications. We do ask them to walk back what they've said. They don't always do it publicly, so that's a big problem. We also have a group of people who write opinion pieces in some of these publications, which we think helps. It's an ongoing struggle, and I think something that we're still working and trying to be creative in.
Thank you for this. So I work in the interfaith landscape and also the voting rights the nonpartisan voting rights landscape, and I'm very grateful for these opportunities, but it's certainly become a more complex environment lately. And something that was very disturbing to me about a month ago was a Jewish organization had us all read an article written by a Jewish journalist in a very left progressive news outlet that was highly critical of the ADL, highly critical of the federations and of the AJC. And this was before the murders at the Jewish Capitol, saying that these are legacy organizations that are using their power and their prestige and their funding to influence government, which is, of course, the age-old anti-Semitic trope out there. And I guess my question is, people are reading this. In fact, this article was then posted by yet another organization, an interfaith organization. So my question is, how do you answer that question in a space that is progressive-leaning, liberal-leaning, that criticizes venerable Jewish institutions that I frankly lean into heavily to support me in my role?
Yeah. So honestly, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's anti-Semitism. Now, I will admit that ADL has had some real fuck-ups this year. I don't know how else to say it. I think we have apologized for that, and Jonathan has gone on to kind of apologize for that. And I think we really need to build back good graces with partners that we have, because when things were said, they only cared about the intent, but not the impact. And the impact was so great. And I'm talking about the Elon Musk Nazi salute. So essentially what the Center of Extremism looked at and said, it doesn't look like a Nazi salute. He's saying, my heart goes out to you. But the impact was that so many people saw it as a Nazi salute, and now white supremacist groups are saying, my heart goes out to you, as like a war cry for white supremacy. And so I'm not surprised that ADL is part of that, because now I think after that, and just as like a anti-Semitic trope, one of the things that's been going around a lot is that like ADL is essentially like Jewish nationalist, which is not the case. There's 4 things that we fight at ADL. One is anti-Semitism, one is bigotry, bias, and discrimination, and then cyber hate and extremism. The other thing I will say is none of the organizations, ADL, the federations, or AJC, they're all 501c3s, so they cannot, right? They can't have leanings. But yeah, I think it is really hard, and I think I can speak from our side. I think we just have to continue to build those relationships and get in people's good graces. And I think that with like you as a partner, and I think that's really important in bringing people in with you. The one thing, we just did this huge study. It was a 2-year study in 2022 and 2023, and the information, or 2023 and 2024, and the information came out in 2025. It was their Center of Anti-Semitism Research presentation. And this would be a good one for me or somebody to come back and do, because it's really interesting. And they talk about how non-Jewish audiences actually connect with Jewish people, and like the story of being a Jewish person right now. The one overwhelmingly, non-Jewish people think of Jewish people as cold and competent. Cold and competent, not incompetent. So cold because they think of the Jewish people as being very insular and not wanting to let outsiders in. Even if that's not true, like I go around the Midwest, Nebraska, Iowa, here, Minnesota, and I have never met like a person that I have not hugged at a synagogue. I don't think Jews are cold at all. But that was one of the things that they think, and then competent, which isn't so bad, but because of that, they don't think we necessarily need help. And so the one picture that resonated with non-Jewish audiences about Jewish people, they showed them 12 images, and they had to like rank which one they connected with the most. And that was the picture of a family on Shabbat. So it's like breaking bread, connecting with each other. I like to joke, like in a People magazine, like stars, they're just like us. And like Jews, they're just like us. And so I would urge you to try to connect with those partners, bring people over, get yourself invited to, somebody's Shabbat, and then bring somebody with you. Building those connections, I think, is what is most important and is what actually changes minds. Like, we're like a big statistics people. We have a lot of slides on Instagram that have a lot of statistics, and I think it's important for Jewish people and allies to see these, but I don't think they're necessarily changing minds for non-allies. And so I think those personal connections are very important. So yes, bring people in, it will change their mind, hopefully.
Hi. Oh, hello. Hi. My name is Jackie. I live in Sheboygan, and I have an 18-year-old son that just graduated from high school. I don't know how much you know about Sheboygan public schools, but they're pretty low in the ranking in the state. So both my boys go to private Christian schools because of the rating of the Sheboygan public schools. And my older son that just graduated actually called the Milwaukee organization a few times about anti-Semitic incidences against him that happened at that school. And when he just graduated, he made really good friends. One of his best friends was one of these boys that originally teased him horribly for being Jewish. And this is a kid, and it's kind of the grouping of my son's sort of idiot friends at this age. They're not so bright at 18 and 19. They're really not. And talking about that Elon Musk Nazi salute, they think it's funny. My son received a card from one of these boys for graduation with cash in it. And he crossed off some of the salutations in the card, and he wrote Jewish, Jewish, Jewish all over there, and he drew swastikas on it. And at the bottom, he wrote, love you. And I was like, I love that you guys are friends and that you've overcome these differences, but, and I don't know how this is this a trend with younger kids that they're thinking this stuff is funny? I mean, they will go and hang out in public places, and some of these kids will do that Elon Musk salute and laugh. And I keep telling my son, the internet is forever. If anyone takes a picture of them doing this, it will come back to them someday. Are you seeing this in that K through 12 environment?
Yeah, so we definitely are. This year specifically, we've seen far more cases. We also see an uprise, usually in cases when they're doing any unit or informational learnings about the Holocaust. So it's just like, it's like something that children do, right? They're testing the boundaries. So that's part of it. Now, I would think by like 18 or 19 years old, you probably shouldn't be doing that, but I will say that maybe this kid's just kind of an idiot. But we do see it. I mean, I had an incident that I just responded to where kids in a 7th grade class, and they had just read, I think, The Diary of Anne Frank, were playing concentration camp at recess. And one of the kids was extremely upset about it because, like, you know, when something happens in the Jewish community, there's a ripple through the entire Jewish community. There's not very many of us. And so, luckily the school, like, acted very swiftly, but I think that's where, like, I think Roberta comes in too, because she oversees the HERC. And Samantha, yes. But Roberta oversees Samantha, so maybe indirectly. But all of the programming in Holocaust Ed, and I would urge you, if you have one more kid at that school, also to have them reach out to the Federation, because they have a lot of resources, and I know that they utilize Echoes and Reflections, which is one of our tools that is just an incredible wealth of information.
Our colleagues are our Holocaust Education Resource colleagues, and Rick is actually the president of HERC, are in almost all school districts throughout the state, and have connections and done training with teachers, and have brought training to students, and just a tremendous resource.
We would like to go with this next year with us.
Oh, I'm sorry. So HERC, our Holocaust Education Resource Center, Samantha Abramson is the executive director, is in almost every school district in the state and does remarkable training for educators, for students. There are times that we partner with them as JCRC and have done some things together, but HERC leads the way in those relationships. And to Rick's point, as the HERC president, there's a good chance they might have already have a relationship with someone and done training, but if you'll reach out, you can just go to Holocaust Education Resource Center and you know, make those connections.
Okay, and I'll just also say my name's Jackie Orozco, and I am at the Jewish Federation as well. Working with Samantha very closely, and part of a newer initiative that is working with anti-Semitism, specifically in the K-12 environment. So feel free to connect with me too, if you have any interest. Yeah.
See, there are no cold Jews. Look, we're making connections.
There are other questions.
One of the things that I'm seeing a lot is all of these outdoor rallies for any cause across America. You always see the keffiyeh, you always see the Palestinian flag, you always see the chanting. And it has nothing to do with the main event that's taking place. So my first question is, how do you count that in the ADL counting? Because you said you look for certain signs of anti-Semitism, and some of these are distinctly anti-Semitic, but truly have nothing to do with the event that's occurring. And second, how are we supposed to deal with these at all of these events that are supportive, causes that we're supportive of and the Jews have always been supportive of, but you go and there's a whole subsegment that's very actively anti-Semitic at these events.
Yeah, it's, so the way that we would, and it is interesting because there was just a rally in Chicago 2 days ago. I luckily had left work early to go to another meeting, so I did not get caught in the like downtown Dearborn being completely shut down. But there was like a huge puppet of Netanyahu, and it was for the ICE raids. I was like, oh, okay, that really does not have anything to do with it. Now, a puppet of Netanyahu, good on you for spending that time making it. I'm sure he appreciates it, but I think if there are anti-Semitic slogans, conspiracy theories, things like that, speeches made, we'll count that as an anti-Semitic incident. If it's reported to us or if we see it in the news. And then the interesting thing is the anti-Israel groups have hired public dissenters. And these are just people to go to all open air rallies, to events, and to dissent. This is their job. So it is very hard to counter that. And it is taking over things. Like I just saw in New York at the Pride Parade, you know, that just became a huge part of it. And now, you know, what's happening in LA and in, you know, major cities, all these protests. So I think, like Roberta said, I don't think we're going to fight fire with fire. We're not going to send people to hold, like, we love Israel signs, because we don't want to put them in any situation that's going to make them unsafe. But I think one of the things that we do is we really try to call it out. So, like, if you look at ADL's, any of our social channels, any of the opinion pieces that are written, we will say, like, these events are being commandeered. Like, people are not feeling safe. And we will get traction on things like that too. We just had a big press conference in Chicago after the shootings in DC. David Goldenberg, our regional director, was able to really call out our mayor. And we got a lot of traction there about some of the things that he has let like slide, which got like a lot of vast viewership. So I think it's really just responding. And I know that we're not going to be able to go to every single place and snatch people's signs, but thoughtfully responding after the point. And the hope is, and this is just me personally, but the hope is that the money is going to like run out. People are not going to be doing this forever. They're not going to be able to pay dissenters forever. People are not doing, I mean, there are some people doing it because they really believe in the cause, but there is a large group of people who are not.
But, I'm sorry, I'm not sure, maybe I have a different question. When you see these protests against ICE, or when you see the No Kings protests, I'm involved in 2 organizations and we don't promote it for many reasons, one of which is what Roberta said, we can't assure people's security. But when you see vast array of people wearing keffiyehs, hiding their faces, waving Palestinian flags, having signs that say Free Gaza, I know it's a slippery slope, but where on that slope of anti-Semitism is it to equate all of these horrors that we feel against the United States government as an avenue to protest Israel, and in many ways Zionism specifically?
Ask me the question one more time.
So in these American protests, when there are vast amounts of people wearing keffiyehs and waving the Palestinian flag,
Yeah.
and even with signs that just say Free Gaza, where is that on this slippery scale
The
of
line,
anti-Semitism?
yeah. So, if you will, it's like a gateway drug, right? But really, if you're not calling for, the destruction of Israel, if you're not spouting anti-Semitic tropes, we would even say saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is anti-Semitic. We've been able actually in schools to get them to ban any t-shirt with that phrase because it is calling for the destruction of Israel. And unfortunately, I think you're right. Waving the Palestinian flag, wearing Israel with the Palestinian flag over it, wearing a keffiyeh is a symbol of intimidation. However, it's very tough because it's still, free speech, So it is like, it's a really fine line. And like sometimes I'll get an incident that'll come in and a student will say, like I just had a graduation incident where a student wore a keffiyeh at graduation. Well, if they're allowed to wear a keffiyeh at graduation, if that's not in like the code of conduct that you don't have to, or that you don't just have to wear your cap and gown, then it's okay, though it is intimidating and it is uncomfortable. However, if there's a professor wearing it, or a school principal or something, and so they're sharing a personal message, that's a little different. So that was just a very specific example, so sorry about that. But yes, it's such a fine line, it's really tough.
So I'm validated in my conclusion.
Yes, for sure. And I'll say, I spoke to a student before the university school year ended, and she said, like, this kid comes in every single day and sits in front of me. He knows, because she has like a sticker that says Zionist on her computer. She goes, he sits in front of me every single day with his keffiyeh, every day, and puts it over his head, and he's not doing it outside of the classroom, and he comes in and does it every day. And I said, unfortunately, he can do it. Move. Or
He was there with the KKK cap on. The schools would never allow it.
yeah.
And they would say that's intimidation, and if you're there to intimidate other students, that is a violation of the code of conduct, and they'd be expelled. But if you do the same thing with Jew hatred, it's fine, and it's freedom of expression. Why is the KKK not a freedom of expression, but having these symbols that
Yeah, it's a double standard. And unfortunately, everything is like a double standard.
But isn't double standard one of the defining characteristics of anti-Semitism?
Yeah, it is. But I don't know how to explain it because I'm not the one in charge, but it is I think even on a university campus, if a student came in wearing a white hood, they might give them a pass. But it is, I do agree with you that it is a symbol of intimidation, and that it is utilized to provoke.
I don't think they give them a pass. I was in law school, we had a Halloween party. An idiot came in a KKK uniform and almost got expelled. There was no way a kid came in a keffiyeh or came wearing a from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Expelling him would be the last thing that the school would consider. It's a clear notice.
I think we're at an impasse on this point. I'm going to move us to take another question, but I think your point is well heard, and
Yeah.
I don't think we have
I'm
a
gonna
clear
think about it.
response.
I really am.
I was just struck by, I was here maybe 3-4 years ago, before October 7th, to hear the ADL presentation at the time. And the messaging then was a bit different in how you were trying to, how ADL was telling us to reach out, which was actually to kind of push this, you know, when you come for a Jew, it's not just a Jew, it's all of you, it could be all of you, right? And that was a very strong kind of, we're getting our strength from alliances with other groups. Has that just cratered since October 7th? Have the dynamics between different minority groups just fallen apart, that the ADL really can't work as strongly with them anymore and is not encouraging that messaging anymore? I'm wondering.
Yeah, so I think we would say the same thing today. So we know that like the Jews are the canary in the coal mine. First they come for Jews and then they come for everybody else. So we would say the same thing. And we do think that different organizations should really band together. Now, I think a lot of organizations kind of abandoned Jewish organizations after October 7th because being anti-Zionist became like a righteous cause and like the left-leaning cause. And being Zionist was painted as the really, it was essentially painted as being racist or prejudice. And so I think, and then I think also bitterness built because people felt like we were not showed up for. Now, I know that we have maintained very strong relationships with other organizations in the city and around the Midwest. We work a lot with the Urban League, with the Chinese American Service League, with the Sikh Foundation, with ASE, it's another organization in Chicago. So I think we are leaning into those partnerships still. They're championing our bill, our hate crimes bill, as well. But I do think that some organizations do feel like they have been kind of left behind.
Last question.
So what is the ADL doing with college campuses? As more things are coming out, we're hearing a lot about college campuses getting a lot of money from organizations and countries that are hostile to Israel and to the Jewish people, and where that sets up a problematic environment in a learning community that should serve all. And what are your kind of inroads into those, and what are you doing about that?
Yeah, so 2 years ago we piloted a program called the Report Card, which is either extremely popular or people really hate it. It's still popular, but people hate it. And it's not the Jewish people that hate it, it's the universities. And so essentially we've been grading universities. We grade them on 3 pieces: policies and procedures, climate on campus for students, and how they enforce policies, and what how they're enforcing policies, and then what like faculty and staff culture looks like as well. And so in the Midwest, we the first year I think scored 5 schools. Last year we did 13. The goal is to add more again next year. And so essentially what it is we send out a survey in November. It's open to the universities, like University of Wisconsin is one of our schools. And we'll probably expand to more schools in Wisconsin as well. And so we send out a survey and we have them fill out those kind of 3 categories, things that you've seen. Then we have a campus team, and the campus team really looks at all that data. There's like 39 points that they score, and each one has a different weight. They're like the quantitative geniuses. And then from that, they pop out a score and give it to the university. So I think University of Wisconsin, I think this year was a C. DePaul in Chicago was an F. University of Illinois Chicago was an F as well. And then what we essentially do is we share the grades, And then as soon as we share the grades, all of the universities finally want to talk to us. Because they don't want, one, Jewish students to be deterred from coming to their schools, and two, they don't want to look that bad, right? They don't want that floating out there. And so then we will give them 1 month to amend policies, code of conduct, procedures, life on campus. A lot of, actually, I think every single university except for 2 has created anti-Semitic task forces now, in the Midwest at least. Change policies and procedures. One of the things that we really worked with universities on right now is when they have events on campus, what's that look like? How is it that these students could just create these, huge villages in the middle of the university without anybody blinking an eye? There's like no time, place, or manner stipulations. So we've helped them implement those. And then the money piece is very interesting. I think more information will probably come from that. I know that that's not something that we're specifically looking at. We're working, I think, more on the side of looking at how to make the climate on campus better, though I think it definitely feeds into the climate. But I do know that that's something that I think the government is going to be looking heavily at.
Well, Rachel, we want to, no, that's fine. We want to thank you one more time for sharing and answering our questions. I know this conversation could continue for hours, and likely for many of you on the way home or once you get home, this conversation probably will continue, reflecting on what we learned today and what we're thinking about moving forward. I do want to share 2 things before we leave. One that Roberta just shared with me that maybe you have already seen on your phones. What Israel has struck Iran, and probably things are going to escalate. So we will clearly keep an eye on that. I'm sure we will see responses that we will want to share with Roberta, with ADL. This, as we've seen from the presentation, this will not, quiet down instances of anti-Semitism and hate. And I also, this is not the introduction I wanted to make to this program coming up next month, but on Thursday, July 10th, it's not the right introduction for your program. NOAA's hosting a lunch and learn here. It was to be about kind of what's happening with Israel's government and reflecting on whatever the most current news is. There'll be a lot to talk about at that event. So it's Thursday, July 12th at 12 o'clock. There's flyers in the foyer, or you can let me know if you're interested, but please come to that, continue this conversation. I think, do you have like a contact slide?
Yes, I do,
also?
and I have thousands of cards. Please don't make me go home with them. It's so embarrassing when I have to.
So if you see things, like share them with Roberta at JCRC, share them with Rachel at ADL, so we can continue to know what's happening and continue to have the resources to educate and combat this exceedingly high number of incidents. And thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you guys, and thank you for asking such good questions. And I have cards in case anybody is dying to have one.